professionals who have guided others through divorce. For more information on this divorce workshop, contact SecondSaturdayWoodlands.com or call 832-375-0900.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZWLP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler. I'm your host. I'm also a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of OneBestConsult.com. I want to thank you first for stopping in to listen to the program, whether you're listening on live FM or you're listening to our podcast. We welcome you. We enjoy having you join the show as well. And one thing I want to mention right at the top, communicate with us. Let us know what's going on. Make suggestions, make observations, criticize us, whatever you'd like to do, drop us an email. It's real simple. Just send it to that's the number 1, bestconsult@gmail.com. bestconsult@gmail.com. Well, my first question or thought for the day, I was thinking about this yesterday when I was preparing for this show, and one of the things I think that gets lost in the shuffle, particularly when there's all kinds of things going on in the world, and our world particularly, right now, talks of recession, inflation, very real situation in our businesses and making very important, sometimes very tough decisions on direction to go, etc., is creative. It seems that our creative thought just kind of gets pushed out. There's not time to be creative. And I want to encourage you, do some creative thinking from time to time. I mean, what have you done today? Just think about what you've done today prior to listening to the show that was creative. In other words, came up with another idea of how to gain new customers, something we're going to be talking about later in the show, or how to solve an issue with getting your deliveries made, or hiring additional folks, big issue. Being creative is so important in coming up with solutions for real problems. So don't just lock out the creative part of your life and say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to sit back for a moment or take a walk and think about important issues or an issue in my business, because obviously this is going to be have a negative impact on your business, your inability to really problem solve or come up with new ideas of how to gain new customers. So kick back and take some time to think creatively. You know, the Weekly Business Hour has been around quite a long time. We're here in Montgomery County. In particular, we're broadcasting live today from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio, located in downtown Conroe, on Live FM, on Conroe FM, here in downtown Conroe at the City Hall building. We're also out there on a number of social media sites, podcast sites, for those that want to listen later on. So if you have you're in the right place if you have a need to answer a question in your business and you want to tap in, if you will, to our creative thinking. We're here. It just takes that email. I answer these questions. In fact, we have what we call a mailbag question today. Pretty darn good question, too. Somewhat general, but a good question, and particularly in the times we're currently in. We also want to get you involved in the conversation. We bring on experts, we bring on entrepreneurs, people who have made their businesses work. They share what they did right, what they didn't do right. Hopefully you can avoid the same mistakes, but become part of the conversation. In the end, our goal is to help you make a real difference in your business by listening and making sense of what we're doing here on the Weekly Business Hour. Reminder to you that if you'd like to watch as well as listen, we're live right now on YouTube, Facebook. Just go to those particular medias, look for the Weekly Business Hour page, and then click on it, and you can watch as well as listen to today's program. We have a very special business guest today, Mr. Mel Kleiman. Mel's the president of Humetrics. I have personally known Mel for 30, 40 years. I was a client or represented a company I was with as a client of Mel. He is a specialist, could be one of the foremost authorities in the entire country about screening as part of your pre-employment process as well as your employment process. The use of various kinds of testing, some of it psychological, some of it not, so that you can design a process so you hire the best employee you can find for a position. The right fit for employees is my opinion, one of the keys to success of any business. Right now, difficult to find people, but when you find someone, make sure it's the right person. So Mel's going to walk us through some of the processes and some of the impact that this low unemployment environment's having, and educate us a little bit about using pre-employment testing. So I hope you'll listen to his entire conversation. He and I visited a few weeks ago and saved it for today's program. So right now, my encouragement, push back, grab a pad, a pen, your computer, and get ready to take notes as we listen to our conversation with Mr. Mel Kleiman. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the street today, looking for someone to talk to, and I've run into one of my old, how old do we want to get, Mel? Old friends, Mel Kleiman. Mel is the president of Humetrics. Their byline is because no one ever regrets hiring the best. In my opinion, Mel is probably the foremost leading authority anywhere on hiring the right people and keeping those people. So today we're going to be talking about the war that's out there, always out there, that you need to win, and that's hiring the best people you can to work in your business. Mel, welcome to the show.
Rick, thanks you, and it's exciting to be here. I just looking forward to talking to you and hopefully sharing some ideas and messages that can help everybody win this literally war for workers today. It used to be a battle, but it's now become a war because we're literally fighting it on a number of fronts. You know, it's not only a front of today of not a finding, and today it's not even a word of finding, it's attracting. It's a war for attracting talent. And then you've got another battle in once you attract them, is how do you make sure you get the right ones? Because in many cases, I talk about the fact the applicants are better than you are at interviewing because they get more practice. And then thirdly, once you get past that point of hiring them, what are you going to do now to keep them? I mean, we've got this, what they call the Great Resignation. I did a webinar just back in February, and I asked a question about how many people in the last year have either gone looking for a job, had a job coming for them, have taken a new job, are going to go get a new job, have turned down an interview, or turned down a job, etc. Out of that audience, 96% of them were involved someplace in the interviewing and hiring process.
Wow. That is just crazy. You know, it feels like one of those situations where you're getting into both ends if you're an employer. The pool of labor is shrunk, we're told, every month. And the quality, obviously, is when you shrink that whole pool. In fact, I believe the pool of labor based on percentages in a lot of places, when you get down to 3%, 3.5%, 4% unemployment, my father used to tell me that you're getting down to where you're down to the bottom. You got people. You might have
Rick. You're past the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, your numbers, your odds, the opportunity. It's difficult. What do you see as far as where we are currently, as far as just the pure pool of available labor?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I did as I was telling you earlier before we came on the air, I did a presentation the other day, and I literally thought about 4 quotes that really kind of summarize it about the need to make sure what I call higher education, hire the right people. And the first quote literally came from Sam Walton. And Sam Walton said, the most important decision a manager makes every single day is who he allows in the door to help him take care of the customer. And when you begin to think about, be that an internal or external customer, but the most important decision you make as a manager is, more importantly, not only who you allow in the door, but the matter is, who do you keep once they've gotten in the door? Because you may make a mistake. The second quote, interesting enough, came from Herb Keller, founder of Southwest Airlines. And I loved his style. And he said, the day we screw up the people, and he used the word screw up the people thing, it's all over. So you've got that, two quotes. And then you got Red Auerbach when he was coaching the NBA, who made the comment, if you hire the wrong people or you put all the wrong people on the team, no fancy management technique is gonna ever bail you out. You know, if you hire the wrong people, why do you keep them? Why do you put up with them? You've made a mistake, cut your losses and get over it. And then, I'm sorry, it's gotten to the point in mine, and I just bluntly said it to the group last week. I said, you know what? Managers, owners get the employees they deserve. They hire them, they motivate them, and they keep them on the bus. So if you've got a problem with people, I got news for you. You're the problem.
You know, it brings to mind a story I read recently, baseball, same thing. I mean, the New York Mets have a player, his name's Conroe, been a good player, won, I think, most valuable player perhaps of the year, but he's in his mid 30s, pushing up towards 40, and his productivity fell off. He's owed $40 million in salary, and they cut him loose, and they're going to pay him $40 million. But he was not the right player to be on the team. The owner, who they claim is the richest owner in baseball, who's trying to build a team. But I had to look at that for a while, $40 million, because this guy just wasn't the right player. And you only, of course, have so many slots on the team. I thought that was an interesting.
I'm gonna take that story and I'm gonna use it, and I'm not even gonna give you credit for it anymore. But the fact of the matter is, that person is, first of all, I am sure he spent a lot of time trying to make that get his return on the investment. He just didn't cut the person because that person, he had a lot invested in him.
Right.
But when it got to the point that the return was hurting the team, because you have to remember, A players only don't want to play on B teams. Okay. So they don't want to play on B teams. And the easiest person to leave you is your A players. So when you've got somebody who's not producing and not helping the team, you've got to make those hard decisions. So.
Well, and that's exactly what happened. His batting average and everything had fallen so far off in the last year. But yeah, that man made a hard decision about his team. And in a sense, I guess you own the team, you write the check too. So anyway. Good story, though. I really think for all of us that make that mistake of hiring inevitably a wrong person and then being able to step up and recognize, admit it, and move forward. Well, today's environment, we talked a little bit about the labor pool. Now we've still got to fill a slot. We still have turnover. We still want to grow our business. We need people. How do you recommend we best go about finding these right people?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna make a statement to you. When it comes to finding people, let's start with it. We are not in a world that we've been in, and this has been a cyclical thing, but it's even the strongest cycle today. We're not in a world of acquiring talent. We're in the world of attracting talent. Okay. Remember, A players, if you've got an A player, the easiest person to leave you is your A players. Okay. Everybody wants to hire them. Okay. So the point being, but here's the question. Why should that, and we'll just use the word ATA players. I call them star employees. And there's a reason for stars, because the stars are people who are self-motivated. That's, they're talented and trainable. They're accountable and responsible. That's a star. Okay. But the question I ask is, why should a star employee come join your team? Okay. What's the reason? If we're going to attract them, do you have, and literally I ask this in every workshop, webinar, live presentation, I say, how many of you in this room, how many of listening to this have what I identify as a unique employment proposition? Do you have a written list of the key reasons that that star employee should come to work for you or become a member of your team? Whether you're in a profit, nonprofit, whatever it is, do you have a written list of why somebody should come? Because if you don't have a list of why that star should be a part of your team, where's that star player going to get the list? So the number one, and the fact of the matter is, if I go across the board, and I don't care if it's small, medium, large corporations, I don't care if they're hourly or salaried, I don't care. I will tell you, less than 10% of all the companies out there today literally have a true unique employment proposition, have really sat there and said, okay, here's the reason, Rick, you should become a member of our team. And it's got to be things that everybody doesn't have on the list, and you can't put things on the list that aren't real, because you may sell it today, they'll be gone tomorrow. So if we do nothing, if I could get anybody out there listening to this and to do one thing, the key is build your unique employment proposition. Just like as a company, as a charity, whatever it is, what is your unique selling proposition? Why should I donate to your charity? Why should I give time to your charity? Why should I support your charity? Why should I buy from you? I can buy from none of us are so unique that there is not a competitor out there. So what's your unique selling proposition? Most of us work at that, but you know what? It's good. Let's go back to that Sam Walton quote. The most important decision you make as a manager is who's leading your team. You've got to make sure you pick the team. Where's that unique employment proposition? Now, we could spend the whole time talking about how to build it, because it's not that difficult. And in building it is one of the best things you can ever do, because the number one key to building it, Rick, is to go to your best employees and say, why do you work here? What makes you get out of bed in the morning and show up? When was the last time, and that's a whole other conversation we could have, but that becomes what I identify as the stay conversation. And I don't know if you've ever talked about this on your program, but we need to be having stay conversations. We need to, we send that survey out to customers. You buy from anybody today, you get that survey. Would you please answer the survey? And then we look at on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank us? Okay. We're looking for people who rank us 9s and 10s, net promoters. Okay. Why don't you ask your employees on a scale of 1 to 10? How do you like working here? And what makes you like it? And what can we change? What could be better? Don't do exit interviews, do stay conversations. And that will help you build your unique employment proposition. So there's just one idea, and we can spend this whole hour if you want to, and it's your program, so you tell me where to spend the time, but we could spend this whole hour talking about building unique employment propositions. But you need one. You've got to have reasons for people to join you. So
it's one of the best things, and I think most useful things I've heard in a long time, just in general. Not only in this program, but from a business point of view, similar to when I first, many years ago, heard about the unique selling proposition. But the self-reflection alone on the owner or the manager to think, why are these people really working here? Why do they stay here? That's just fantastic. And I agree. And I'm guessing more because you've been at it for so many years, that less than 10% of the companies spend any time. It really is. Just spend any time. So I hope everybody heard that loud and clear. Well, Mel, we cover the unique proposition of getting people to stay. That nugget alone to me is worth the price of admission. Let's kind of move down the line a little bit in the process. Now we've attracted people, as you said, to the job. What about the interview process itself? What is it that we need to key on to do the best job possible?
Rick, we have 15 minutes left to make everybody into a better interviewer. And the fact, again, back to the fact, if you look at it, how many of you have really been trained in interviewing? And let's just take the number, like as we talked about unique employment propositions, before we start the interviewing process, I love to use an analogy in my presentations. And I ask a question, and I ask a very simple question: how many people in the room do jigsaw puzzles? And I get lots of hands go up. And then I say, okay, so you all do, what is the most important piece or part of a jigsaw puzzle? And somebody will raise their hand, and the standard answer is number one, the borders. You got to get the borders. Well, I throw a curve at them. I say it's a round puzzle. Now we got another problem. Some people say it's the first piece. You look for the one that can start to build something off of. Some people say it's the last piece. Someone says it's the piece that people can't find. And I said, you're almost right, but literally think about what the most important part of the jigsaw puzzle is. And in the reality, to make it easiest, it's the picture on the box. Have you ever done a jigsaw puzzle without looking at the picture on the box? And I had this person in a session a couple of years ago, I will never forget, because she said, we not only never look at the picture on the box, we bought a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and we turn all the pieces upside down. I said, why would you do that? She said, it's 10 times harder. I said, two other things: you're cheap and you hate yourself. When was the last time when you went out to hire that employee, you painted the picture on the box? Can you tell me what the successful end product looks like? That's the number one key to doing a better job of hiring, is knowing what success looks like. We talk about job descriptions. Well, let me tell you, job descriptions are government documents in most cases. They are written by the HR department to meet government qualifications about you must be able to lift, bend, reach, stoop, but they're written for government regulation. They're not a true picture on the box. So again, let me give you what everything I try and do is I call it uncommon common sense. Okay, let's look at what you need a picture on the box. Let's change, this is not for government issue, but let's change the picture. You have hired a new employee. I don't care what the job is. I don't care if it's a fast food clerk. I don't care if it's a new HR executive. I don't care if it's a new sales manager, salesperson. I don't care what the job is, a new vice president of operation, a new CEO. You have hired this person. It is a year down the road and they have hit a home run. They have more than met, they exceeded expectation. So what I need you to do is I need you to write that letter of recognition telling me what that person did and how they did it to hit that home run. When you write that letter of recognition, you're nominating him for the Employee of the Year award, you have now given me a true picture of what success in that job looks like. And it has nothing to do with the fact they had a college degree. It had nothing to do with 90% of the things that are on that job description. But it says, this is what they did and this is how they did it. Because we hire for the wrong thing. Most of us hire for skill. We hire people for what they know. We fire them for who they are. So what I could do, again, is we could expand this into an entire webinar, or whatever we want to call the podcast. We could expand this in just looking at that. But that, again, we talked about your unique employment proposition to win. Secondly, you need a unique job description to win the battle. What did the person do? How did they do it? And if you build that, we'll begin to find that you're not talking about skill. In fact, as an exercise, if I had you and I said to you, okay, think about the best employee you have working for you. and give me one word that describes them. 99% I would never get a skill word. I'd get a word like dependable, reliable, conscientious, team player, does whatever he has to do, does whatever she needs to do, works well with others. I will tell you, 90% of what I get is attitudes and beliefs. They have a positive work attitude. They hold themselves accountable. They take responsibility. So we need to know what we're looking for to go out and interview. That's the number one mistake when it happens, interviewing. Once you do that, we can build simple questions. Literally, great interviewing is not difficult. It really isn't if you have the right questions and know how to answer them, but more importantly, not how to ask them, but what does a great answer look like? Let me just give you one example. This is my number one, Rick, and I'm not even going to ask you to role play, but I could, it'd be a great role play. Most people, somewhere in the first part of the interview, and I could talk about that mistake too, but most people in the first part of the interview start the interview and say, Rick, would you tell me a little bit about what you've been doing? Tell me a little bit about your last job. That's the standard question. It's the wrong question. Everybody's got a canned answer for what they're now doing. Everybody's got a canned answer for their last job. Let's reverse the question and say, tell me about the very first thing you ever did to earn money. And I said I wouldn't, but I'm going to. Rick, literally, what was the very first thing you ever did to earn money?
Yeah, and the question is your first paying job. That's number one on my list, by the way, and I'm sure I learned it from you some years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what was your very first?
My very first job would have been on working on the line, packaging shirts. I was about 8 years old.
How old?
But I grew up in a family business, so.
That's okay. But what was the first thing so it was working on the line, folding shirts? What? Okay.
Right,
How old were you?
Boxing shirts.
How old were you?
8 years old.
8? Are you serious? Child
Very
labor.
Well, it was called summer camp. And I loved
what were the most important? Here's you are, 8 or 9 years old. What were the most important things you learned at that 8 or 9 year old young kid doing that?
Teamwork, because it was a line. There were multiple people. There was a conveyor belt. Things are moving. You had to have teamwork, keep the line moving, keep everything organized, keep the orders together. You learned about that. Yeah, I learned a lot about people's personalities because the people on the line were talking all the time to each other, whether it was about personal things or the weather or, the orders. They just had a way of doing it. So I learned about efficiency, how you do certain things a certain way. It's better, it's more efficient. So always had a problem with that tape machine. In those days, tape wasn't self-adhesive. You had to run it through a machine that put water on it. And I always had it all wound up because you tape the boxes, right? So a lot of little things like that. But mainly I learned about people and their personalities and the differences, and learned about good people and some people maybe that weren't so good.
I probably learned more, or the people listening to this probably learned more about you in the last 3 minutes than most people ever learn in an interview. Nobody lies to the question about the first job. What was your first job? Oh, I can remember. What'd you learn? I hated it. What was my first job? You talk about this. I always remember one guy in a session. I said, what was your first job? And his first job, he was a little older than you. He was 13. He got a job working in a Chinese restaurant, and he wasn't Chinese. And he said, okay, what was your job? He says, washing dishes.
Oh,
okay. I said, what did you learn? He said, the number one thing I learned, and I'll never forget his answer. He said, wet rice is heavy. And I laughed, and he had a sense of humor. But I said, what did you learn? He said, what do you learn? I said, you learn to show up. You learn to do what you're told to do, and you do it the first time. Because if you don't show up and you don't do it, you don't have a job, and I needed a job. I said, why'd you need a job? You're 13 years old. And I'll never forget the answer. He said, my dad had died and there was no insurance. I had a younger brother and a younger sister, and I had to help my mom pay the bills. You know what? Sometimes you do whatever you have to do because it has to be done. And that's why I did it. And how long were you there? He said, I was there. I worked every weekend and every night after school. I was there until I was 16 years old. And I'll love the answer until I could get a real job. You want to hire him? I'd hire him any day of the week. And the fact of the matter is, I was doing this workshop for a chain restaurant group. He was 26 years old. He had put himself through college. He was not a restaurant manager. At 26, he was an area manager with 9 restaurants underneath him. He did whatever he had to do to get the job done. So we could spend this whole time talking about the interviewing question, but that's just one of the keys.
Well, and the way I used personally, and not as well as extensive as that, is I always have a job requirements to go with my job description, and the requirements being the kind of person, the attitude, their ability, and it always throws people though for a loop when I ask them to develop that for the, for an open position. Because like you say, it's always about job description. How many can you do this, or have you done that, or you moved this, or and trying to talk about the kind of person they're looking for that they need that can be most successful. It throws people off. Well, we're running out of time, but I've got to ask you this. Another thing that's a phenomena that's happening right now that I think folks would be interested in, and is this ghosting, as it's become known, where you hire someone, they agree, Monday comes around 8:00 and they don't show up, they don't call you. Most recently, I was talking to a well-known tax lawyer here in the greater Houston area, and they had an attorney they hired that did this, which is amazing because everybody knows everybody. Ghosting in some industries is 25, 30% of the hires now. What do we do as an employer to try to avoid hiring people that are going to ghost us?
Okay. Rick, again, will you give me 3 minutes for an hour-and-a-half discussion? Let's just go back to the first early ghosting. You hired them. They come to, well, there's one, do they show up for the, ghost, do they show up for the interview? That's part of ghosting, okay?
Right.
You hired them. They come to work. They don't show up the next day. Ghosting. Why? Okay. Everything I talk about is what I call common sense. Okay. Nothing I'm telling you, hopefully, is common sense. But it's amazing how many people don't do what we talk about. But let's look at just one key. You have hired this new employee. It's his first day on the job. At the end of that day, or even during that day, he's going to talk to a number of different people, his friends, his partners, etc. At the end of the day, everybody's going to ask him one question. What is the question going to be? What are you going to ask? Your son took a new job. Your girlfriend took you talk to her. What's the question you're going to ask that person?
How they enjoyed their day, how they did.
How do you like it?
Right.
Okay, if that's the question, on the very first day, what does the answer need to be?
Well, that could vary.
It needs to be fabulous, terrific, unbelievable. I can't believe I was so lucky to get this job. Okay. How many of you make the first day the best day any new employee ever had? That's the question.
That's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to, you know what? We know what the question is going to be. And we could spend we could spend 3 hours just talking about how you make the first day the best day. I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about the last 15 minutes. You hire a new employee, Rick, it's the end of the first, at some point in time early in the day, in orientation, I say, Rick, before you go home as your manager, before you go home today, if I don't come see you 15 minutes before you leave, you come see me, because I want to know how the day went. That will cut ghosting to almost zero.
Interesting.
Somehow
Very interesting.
That will cut ghosting literally to almost zero. You would never let a customer walk out frustrated. But you know what? You didn't get that computer setup, didn't work that you set him up. You didn't have his computer set up correctly. Something else happened. You promised he was going to get some training. He didn't get the training. She didn't get the training. I can tell you horror stories after horror stories, not only at hourly, but professional. You know what? They got other options. You know, why would this, you know what, you can, if you know they're frustrated, you can say, Rick, I understand the challenges today. Let's work through these. Give me a couple of days. This will get, you remember, okay, let me go back to one quick one. Remember that day on the line, folding shirts? Okay. You were probably pretty frustrated at the end of the day because you couldn't get those friggin' labels to stick on. What would have happened if whoever you were working for that day said, hey, Rick, I understand the problem. And until it's going to take you about a week. But once you master this, it is going to be so easy. Just give it the week. Okay? Will you give it the week, Rick? Are you committed to giving me that week? Did I get a commitment?
And then you've got a commitment from them.
That's
It has become really frustrating, Mel, as you can imagine, in dealing with people. And particularly the ones that don't even show up the first day. People, which to me says you've hired the wrong person if they don't show up the first day or contact you. I mean, just disappear. I mean,
Well,
made that offer to someone you shouldn't have made an offer to.
but I can show you how, that may have been a great employee, but maybe you didn't make the offer the right way.
Yeah.
You
Let's
know
save
what?
that for another time, because I'd love to have
Okay.
you back. We've run out of time today, but like you say, many of these topics are worthy of digging into and talking to more and in depth. And I think we just touched on several that I feel that our audience will find great benefit in what we've shared today. And hopefully you'll agree to come back in the future. If someone wants to reach out and contact you, has a question about what they heard today or talk about what you might be able to do to help their company, what's the best way for them to do it?
Okay, best way is you can go to my website, Humetrics.com. I don't know if there's an email, if you've got an email or contact information on, or we can put it on here. They can email me. They can pick up the phone and call me. Email is mkleiman, KLEIMAN @Humetrics, HUMETRICS, humanmeasurement.com. You can call me, numbers on the website. I will be glad to help anybody I personally can. If you can't tell, I think I'm passionate about this.
Absolutely. And you absolutely understand it better, again, than anyone I've ever come across in my life. So, Mel, thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my message.
And we look forward to having you again later in the year, hopefully, to talk about some of the other topics out there.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
OneBestConsult.com, a community of small business owners where you as an owner can find answers to the most pressing business questions you have. Not sure who to turn to when you have a challenge in your business? Turn to the folks at OneBestConsult.com. That's the number one, bestconsult.com, where you can always find advice you can use based on common sense business experience. Join our community of like-minded business owners at OneBestConsult.com.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mel Kleiman. You found it useful and perhaps picked up an idea or two. I would encourage you, based on my personal experience, as I say, I've known Mel for many, many years and have used his products, his services, and they've always, always been an outstanding addition to what we're doing in our hiring process. But I think it was a great conversation. I hope for pre-employment testing and the value in your hiring process, it's something you need to do. We all are focused on how hard it is to find people. Once we get them in, if they got a heartbeat, we hire them, right? Well, I'm being facetious, but take some time. Make sure you get the right person, the right slot, and that'll cut down on your back-end turnover. Well, I hope you'll stay with us for the second half of the show. We've got a mailbag question coming up concerning how to do a better job managing day-to-day operations. Interesting question, and hopefully have a few good ideas for them as well as you. And then I'll close today's show as I typically do with my One Best Consult tip of the week, meeting today's challenge in finding new customers and keeping them. Talk a little bit about customer acquisition and also about keeping them. So please stay with us. We're going to take our bottom of the hour break, and we'll be back with you very shortly. Thanks.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
From the beginning, the main purpose of the Cooperative Extension Service has been to change human behavior by teaching people how to apply the results of scientific research. By utilizing a holistic, multi-level approach, Extension family and community health programs encourage health and well-being for everyone, addressing values, concerns, and needs with reliable science-based information. Extension programs help people lead healthier lives. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for being with us today. And don't forget that a podcast of today's program will be available in a couple of days on Wednesday, and you can find it right here on irlonestar.com, Lone Star Community Radio's website, or you can go to our website at onebestconsult.com and find a copy, as well as a number of other podcast sites around the world. Mailbag question, real quick one here. Received a question regarding day-to-day management of the business. And the question that was posed to us, let me just kind of paraphrase it for us, came from Sam in Oklahoma. He says, quote, "I have trouble getting all the things I think I have to do each day done. Any ideas on how I can get more accomplished in a given day, particularly what I call my task, the important things that I and my employees need to get done to keep the business running?" Well, I'm going to address that. Sam, task. This is not just the phone call where you get an order and you got to process the order, but it's putting in place important processes, for an example, that are tasks that need to be accomplished. No doubt about it. When you receive that order, regardless of how it may come in, the internet or phone or in person, then you have to execute that order. But you've got to have a process. You've got to have a process that's well thought out, in my opinion, and one that you've tested, and you always are seeking to tweak it to make it even better, hopefully more cost effective and working better for your customer. And those are kind of the two pillars of this thing: more cost effective and working better for your customers. So many times you see a business where they just kind of ignore improvement. And I think that's one of the reasons people kind of get on that old wheel where they feel like they're going around and around and around, because they don't take time from time to time. They don't take issue with improving how they solve their task on a day-to-day basis. First thing in tackling a task that's before you, you've identified an issue or it's been brought to you, is to assess the task itself. Now, this may sound a little laborious, but just take a few minutes or assign it to someone else that you trust, knows the subject. Get them to break it down. First of all, find the source of the work that's being done. Where does it come from? Who initiates that process? Is it the client, a supervisor, a vendor? Find out where the source is, and then evaluate that process, if you will, for the specific task. Turn it inside out, upside down. Is it doing what it needs to do, and is it doing the very best it can do? This is where what I call tweaking comes in. And then decide is what's at the tail end, what are you going to do with the history or the inventory or the work product? Where are you going to store it? Okay? who's going to be responsible for this? Identify the people. Do the people have the skills, the qualifications, the motivation to do it? The second step, I believe, is you prioritize the task. We all have to prioritize. Now, prioritizing is, in this case, is not so much about a deadline, that I got to prioritize things to meet a deadline, but it's more about the importance of the particular task. So you've got to weigh all of those factors, the importance, the deadline, and then prioritize your task. Not just that it's due on Monday. You may have 10 other things that are much more important that need to be done. In some way, somehow, you may need to push Monday. And then finally, you need to delegate to the right people. This is where I see processes break down most often. In the office, we sit down, we take out a pad and pen, we have a meeting or two, and we build a process together, and everybody says, wow, that'll work fantastic. But it's the implementation where it falls down. The people involved, for an example, that we've got involved in the process are not qualified to do it. We haven't taken time, for an example, to educate them, to teach them the process, and most importantly, then seek their input so we can truly tweak the process to work best in our environment with our people, with our customers. And last but not least, don't drop the ball. Be sure you evaluate processes and tasks that you do as you complete them. I always had a rule of thumb that I would implement a new process procedure, I would finish a task, and in most cases, in 30 days, I'd evaluate it, in 3 months again, and then in 6 months. And at that point, I felt like, for the time being at least, it was a permanent change. So, Sam, there's a very simple process that you can go through in order to keep your task organized and producing the kind of work on time that you need to do. We're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, I'm going to cover my tip of the week, meeting today's challenge in finding new customers and keeping them. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
Lone Star Community Radio is ready for the summer. If you or anyone you know is looking for a summer internship, Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to learn the radio and TV business. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776. Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world.
Hey, tune in to the Bridge Podcast TX Tuesdays at 11 a.m., where we are connecting commerce with community, interviewing business owners and leaders in the community, allowing the audience to peek behind the curtain of what inspires, motivates, drives these individuals to have meaningful, positive impact in this community. For more information about the show, log into irlonestar.com/TBPTX.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you've enjoyed today's show, and let me again remind you that if you missed part of the show or you want to re-listen, or perhaps you want to do me the honor of sharing it with someone, a podcast will be available after Wednesday of this week. It'll be posted on my website, on the radio station's website, also on a variety of other social media sites and podcast sites. If you ever have a comment or you have trouble finding it, just drop me an email, bestconsult@gmail.com, and we'll work quickly to connect you with the podcast so you can revisit the show or share it with someone. Well, one of the most important challenges for any business is acquiring customers, is finding new customers. And I'm not going to spend any time talking about marketing per se, or this advertising is better than that advertising, or should be in the newspaper, but no, online, digital, we've talked about that before, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it in the future. But what I'm going to talk about is a couple of things that I think are the basic ingredients or the basic items that you need to make sure you're doing. First of all, how are customers going to find you if they don't know where you are? Now, if you have a physical location, it's located on a busy street, then there are things you can do with signage, et cetera, et cetera. And again, we've talked about that. But what's really important, I believe, is we understand that acquisition of customers is a first step towards building a relationship, hopefully a long-term relationship. And let me give you a statistic that I read the other day. The cost of acquiring new customers has increased almost 60% over the past 6 years. The cost. You need to understand your cost of acquiring a customer. Do you know what it costs you to acquire a customer? If you don't, then I would encourage you to figure it out, because once you see that figure, and if you're like most of us, most of the time when I've done this exercise, the number just makes my eyeballs almost want to pop out of my head. Can't believe it costs that much to acquire a customer. But it really introduces a bit of reality into what you can spend or what you are spending. And by keeping that customer, you don't spend that money again to acquire them. It's a very important concept. Almost 50% of the companies that are out there in business of all sizes say the most important part of their marketing, the primary objective, is to acquire new customers. So the first step, though, is you got to figure out who the ideal customer is. In my experience, most small businesses struggle with that. To be able to sit down in very short order, doesn't have to be complicated, to write out, determine what their customer looks like, building their profile, if you will. It's not that difficult, but it does take some of that creative time that we discussed at the beginning of the show. But I think it is one of the most crucial steps that you take in building your business, is creating the profile of the customer that you're looking for. Now, the assumption being made that that customer is out there in enough numbers, has got enough money, and is looking for your product or services, right? Once you understand that, what does that customer look like? What is their background? What is their profile? Then the easy part to me is you create the content that appeals to that customer. Brand awareness is something that a lot of small businesses don't like to talk about. I think it is an underlying support for acquiring customers that is very important, even to small businesses. Large companies have people that do nothing but work on branding. We as a small business, we're not there. But to understand the importance of it is my brand. If my customers know what my brand is, they know me for this, they know I do this very well, then they become loyal to my brand. And all of a sudden, I'm doing branding. I think that's real important. One of the basic ways that you can build your brand is through PR. And locally, we have people like Margie Taylor with Taylorized PR that are very familiar with the local market. And if you're here in Montgomery County, for an example, you have that opportunity to find someone that works with you, and through the PR, building awareness in the market in general, and hopefully particularly with the ones that fit your profile. It's not a difficult thing. Last but not least, make sure your customers are excited about doing business with you. And I don't mean hurrah, hurrah, pop the bottle of champagne, but they are happy with what you do. And if you can find ways to even make them, I'll use this word, happier, then you're ahead of the game. This is what it is about retaining customers. We are in a very challenging market right now in most businesses. We've got recession, we've got inflation, we got negative. And people are spending money, but at some point, perhaps they won't be spending money. I've already seen people that I know who have cut back. Automobile industry's already feeling it if you read national publications or listen to national business news. It's coming, it's here, and that's why it's so critical, in my opinion, to make sure you have that profile. Make sure you're marketing to that profile, and make sure once you have me as a customer that you're doing things that keep me. And maybe I cut back my spend in general. I don't spend as much money, but what I have, I will give you part or allocate part of my spending to you so that you can at least survive if, in fact, there is a recession and a downturn. So think about it. If you've got a question about this subject or any topic we talk about, please drop us an email. Again, onebestconsult@gmail.com. We answer those emails, even if they're personal to your business. Also enjoy receiving your comments. Constructive comments are always appreciate it because this show is all about you and doing business with you. Again, I want to thank Mel Kleiman for taking the time to share his wisdom and experience on how to make the right hire. If you'd like more information from Mel, then check out his website at Humetrics, Humetrics, Humetrics.com. A lot of good information right there on the website, also how to contact him. And please put a note on your calendar to join us again next week, Monday, 11 a.m., right here on Conroe FM. And until next week, do us a favor, do you a favor, me a favor, stay engaged this week, and always keep focus on what's important in your business. Thanks.